What's going on, everybody? Doc from Average Gamer Guys, back yet again. More Halo Wars 2 action, more colony chat. So today, this video was something that we want to do quick follow-up for all the balance changes that we're seeing with the new update. Again, 10.2 gigabyte update. It is finally out after many long waits for today, throughout today. The update dropped, and then it took a long time for Colony to actually make it to the store, and that came out in waves. But there is a long list of updates for this, so we're going to jump right into it. I'm not going to promise everything will be up on screen. If it's not, I apologize, but I do want to get this video up quickly, so I'm going to talk through the major things, try to cover everything as detailed as I can while also being time considerate, so I will try not to ramble. So here we go. So starting with Anders, we'll talk UNSC first. Anders was someone that the team thought was kind of had some cheesy strategies. They reduced Kodiak fire rate, and a reduction in the spawn sentinel patrol duration should keep some of the turtling, is what they called it, down to a minimum. So arc cleansing cooldown has been increased by 9%. Retriever Sentinel is something else that got kind of a buff, if you will. Its cooldown increased by 9%. It gets a 20,000 point shield if you've also selected Sentinel Energy as part of your leader power updates, upgrades, if you will. Retriever Beam DPS has been increased by 50%. The Retriever Large Beam damage increased by 20%, and then the Y ability area of effect has been a rework. This really seems to try to put Anders kind of back into the consideration and give her a little bit more offensive power, as her Retriever Sentinel, as they said, really wasn't doing what it should be. Arc Defense, it had its costs increased across the board for each of the levels, and its cooldown additionally was increased by 20%. Research and development for Anders now affects unit-specific upgrades like UNSC Marine Grenades or the Scorpion Canister Cell, so that's interesting. Lure Beacon, the spawned patrol time has been reduced from 6 seconds to 3.5. Leader Power Selection Turret has been swapped with Lotus Mines. I think this is a smart play here. Lotus Mines are now level 2, Turret Drop is now level 3. So I'm okay with that. I will say up front, it seems like a lot of the leader changes, a lot of what we're seeing here is just trying to put leaders back into balance. They took a long look, it seems like, at who was being used, when they were used, and what their win percentage was. So obviously a little bit of that's biased, but over the long term you can see some general trends of who people are using, who they aren't using, and when they do get used, how often they win. So it seems like that's the main focus of this, so I'm pretty happy about it. Seems like they've got a good pulse on it. So for Cutter, Archer missiles, they've had their costs increased across the board, as well as their cooldown increased by 17%. Pelican gunship, cooldown increased by 9%, and then the orbital battle group cooldown increased additionally by 9%. So it seems like Cutter seems like he's pretty well in a good place. Just a few balance tweaks here, so not bad. Isabel's got a ton. She was suffering from a low pick and a win rate. Most potentially, they said she was most potentially an interesting leader, and that was about it. They're trying to pump up her key abilities, let her stand amongst the other leaders again, as I said. And Ghost of the Machine is now a very scary ability, allowing you to control units for 13 seconds flat. So that's really interesting. Its cost has been increased, again 13 seconds flat, and it has an increased area of effect by 12%, so that's pretty good. Ghost of the Machine is one of my more favorite Blitz leader powers, so interesting to see the effects here, and then obviously on the multiplayer side, that's a good increase. Heavy Metal, ton of changes for Heavy Metal, ton of changes for Hollow Decoy and Macblast. A lot of cost increases here, but also a lot of other balancing things. For instance, Macblast will focus on that. Again, its cost increase all through 3 levels. Its level 1 damage was increased by 33%. Its cooldown subsequently was increased by 17%. And then the AoE from it was increased, it seems, as well. Level 2 damage was increased as well as level 3 damage. So trying to make Macblast good again. It was great in the beta, and it kind of lost a little bit of its effectiveness over the course of the last little bit, so it's nice to see that get back in line. Her turret drop has also been switched with Lotus Mines, putting turret drop at 4 and Lotus Mines at 2. Forge, some small upgrades here, or balance changes, excuse me. Heavy metal, its duration's been increased by 25% at level 1. Level 2, the damage resistance was increased from units taking 50% to only 35%, and then level 3, the duration was reduced by 12%, and a slight change to the resistance, damage resistance. And then Scatter Bomb increased both level 1 and 2 for cost, and then cooldown was increased by 17%. The incoming strike warning time reduced from 2 seconds to 1.5. So this is nice. This was nice just from a standpoint that, we saw an issue where having those leader powers come in kind of slow just made it too easy for a good player to get out of the way of. And this, even the half second, is essentially going to just help trap and get some more damage for you. So Consano was well received by the community. High pick, high win rate. They're pushing the turret drop to farther back in the leader power, which is good because it was really too strong in the early game. They also made some fixes where her red line ability was performing a lot better than it should have. They think this will kind of settle her in to the group instead of being ahead of it. Firestorm Battle Group cooldown increased by 9%. The Inferno cooldown increased by 10%, and then initial damage reduced by 16%, which is really interesting from the standpoint that Kasano's Inferno was probably one of the best abilities we had seen. So it's kind of nice that it gets a little bit of a nerf. The initial damage reduction, I think, is a smart play. Red light damage bonus reduced from 10 to 8%. Napalm missiles increased costs across the board, as well as an increased cooldown. And then leader power selection, again, turret drop was swapped places with heat of battle, which is really good. Again, turret drop being in the first one was too good. So Decimus, they had the same issues with Decimus as well as Isabel, low pick, low win. And they're just trying to make him better. They want him to be an aggressive leader that needs to be played aggressively to make the most of his abilities. So Killing Frenzy, duration reduced from 15 to 6 seconds, but damage dealt modifier from 5 to 50%. So that's really crazy. Siphon here, level 1, heal percentage increased to 45, level 2 to 53, level 3 to 60%. Fury, whole ton of upgrades for Fury, Vortex Lightning, Glassing Beam, and the Decimus drop. So a ton of just updates, and again, it seems like buffs with some slight nerfs, certain things being increased, cost being increased, durations being increased as well, but also cooldowns being affected to try to put it back in line. So that seems really nice. Again, I'll link the forum post down below so you guys can read specifically all about it, but it seems, again, a lot of balance type changes trying to get set up so that really they can put them back in line, which is what they need to do. Atriox, they said he was performing well as one of the top strategy, especially making use of his invulnerability style powers. They want it to still be valid, but they want essentially his units to die a little bit more. They said Eradication was a very effective base sniping tool that wasn't a whole lot of fun to play against, and they want that to come online a little bit later, as well as some other powers and some small changes to Eradication. So Unbreakable had its cost increased, its duration reduced. Dying Breath had a cooldown increased by 50%. Time that unit stays alive after dying is decreased from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. Eradication cost increased from 800 to 1,000 respectively for each supplies and energy. Its cooldown increased by 9%. and then reduce the damage to buildings beam radius increased by 10%. So that seems pretty good. The bulwark, they reduced the invulnerability times essentially by a second, and then by a second and a half at level 2, and then by 2.5 seconds at level 3. So really taking it down quite a few notches there. And then glassing beam, cost increase all three levels, cooldown increased by 17%. And then Aatrox is chosen, stun changed to a 20% slow. Seems okay. Shipmaster, displacement was extending games and a very powerful tool in the right hands. They still want it to be useful as before. Players will need to think about exactly where they want to use the power, as the cooldown is a lot longer. They said Shipmaster is generally playing well, with some amazing players doing some very impressive plays. So they kind of want to keep him in line. So again, displacement, its cost was increased. Its cooldown increased by 100%. So twice as long now. Mass cloaking, cooldown increased by 11%. Same thing with tactical gateway. And then glassing beam, cost increase across the board. And then cooldown increased by 17%. And then spirit support, they decreased the cost of spirit support just a little bit, but it now drops off 2 veteran level 1 engineers instead of 2 veteran level 3 engineers, which is good. So it's kind of taking the veteran level off of the engineers, making them just a little bit weaker. And then we get into some generic base and unit changes. So fortified base upgrades they found were making some matches go too long, so they've changed those. So the buff to the building and the turret HP was reduced. Buff to building turret damage was reduced to match other global upgrades. The level 1 discount, 2 discount, and 3 discount were all reduced from 100 to 50 supplies. And then command XP, the XP reward for building a new base and mini base was too high. It was essentially leading players to get to higher level leader powers too quickly in the game. So they've reduced the XP for building a new base and mini base by 50%, and then the XP level boundaries changed so that level up and getting leader points takes a little bit longer, which I think is good because that makes you fight the units, and that makes the strategy for using leader powers a little bit more skillful, to be honest. Banish units, the Locust, basic damage reduced by 11%. Their speed was reduced from 11 to 9.5, which is nice. Locusts now do reduced damage versus air units, which is really good. And they now do reduced damage as well to anti-vehicle counter units, such as Cyclops and Hunters, which is also really good. So we are still putting them into line. They are still one of the best units in the game, and I think they'll continue to be. But it seems like those little changes there, especially the speed and the reduced damage, will definitely help. Wraith, they've increased the cost of the Wraith just by a little bit. Plasma cannons now do a reduced damage by 6%. They reduced the plasma mortar by 6%, and they reduced the size of the plasma mortar. So it seems like in the last update, they made the Wraith just a little bit too good. And then finally, wrapping it up, UNSC units, the Jackrabbit, the healing drone, delay to heal has been increased from 4 seconds to 10 seconds. This is really good because obviously we've seen a lot of the Jackrabbit rush, and that's something that has been happening. And the fact that they can heal and heal so quickly and effectively really does kind of put them above and beyond, I think, what we want to be able to see, and made them too effective in large groups. So it's nice to see that change. Their cost has also been changed just slightly. 20 more supplies, 3 more energy. Scorpion, they increased the canister shell by 30%. I'm assuming damage. I don't know what else it would be. I guess it would be damage. Turret drop, cooldown was increased by 13%. Again, we were seeing a lot of this at the very beginning of matches. You run some small groups over, drop in turret, and it's pretty hard to defend because the turret has a lot of health. They increased the cost at both levels, and then the turret drop weapon now does reduced damage versus structures, which is really nice as well. So it becomes less of a base destruction than a anti-unit, which I think it was originally intended to be. And then Kodiak, they reduced the rate of fire, reduced by 1 second, and then they adjusted the damage to compensate. So it seems like the shells will do more, but we're also obviously getting them less consistently. So that will wrap it up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Again, if I didn't show everything on screen, I do apologize, but I want to do a quick, pretty concise video talking about the major changes. Check the forum post down below for everything, because I will link the actual forum post for this. Hopefully you guys found this interesting and helpful, and stay tuned. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Hit that little bell button for us that gives out notifications when we do post a new video. Additionally, we just did our first stream tonight actually, so thanks everybody for watching. I think we're going to look to do more of those in the future if you enjoyed that. So make sure to follow us on Twitter as well, and we'll be good about letting you know when those are going to happen and come up. And then hopefully again, we would like to play with some of you guys in the near future on some streams. I think that would be really fun. So I've been Doc with Average Gamer, guys. Thank you so very much for watching. Let me know your comments down below on how you're feeling about the new colony update and how you feel about all these balance changes. Thanks again for watching.